I got to figure out better naming conventions for these videos. It's fun to come up with silly names sometimes. I think it would be better to save those for the description. So I'm thinking of switching that up to being a standard format. Right now, I'm looking at trying to remember to make sure I put these in the right folder of created content. So like this and maybe the last 2 nights still need to go into the live creations daily. Do I want to call it LCD? LCD. I don't know if I want to do that, but something like daily. No, because like daily creations, that's a little more like what I was doing for the painted artwork, where I painted a picture, and the painting was done that day. Whereas I haven't done anything really with the idea that each day was a new creation. So I don't know. I don't know if it makes any kind of sense to frame it as a daily creation, although I do want to do a daily writing exercise during one of these, so I could do 7 stories in 7 days. It'd be kind of fun to do maybe like a 7 dice games in 7 days. I don't know. I have to figure out some things about some other simple short games that I could come up with quickly. 7 videos in 7 days. I don't know that I could do 7 products in 7 days. That might be really hard to do. I could do 7 recipes in 7 days. Might be able to do 7 artworks or 7 songs in 7 days again. And I suppose I could do 7 well-being exercises. So like fitness, diet, or like mental health exercises. So I could do it for most of it. The products, I think, would be the difficult one. Like the board games, the products, and the video games would all be really difficult things to pull off. Like 1 per day, I think that would be really hard to do. But it would be fun to try if I could figure out how to do something simple for each of those. So 1 per day. I know this is game creation week, and this has little to do with games. I'm sort of rambling right now. I know. Is my mic close enough to pick me up? That's probably another important question. Let's not put the drink too close to the microphone or the keyboard. That would be nice. Alrighty, so, okay, 1 per day. Short stories. 1 per day. Per day. I realize that says partied right now. I might be a little deficient on sleep today, so I might be a little rambly and a little weird. Well, I'm clearly spelling everything wrong now. Short videos. Games. And products. And then we've got recipes and art or song. Video game is going to be a hard one. Per day. So I'll have to come back to that and think about that later. So things I was working on today for figuring stuff out. I had to do some errands. Called the doctor to see if I could arrange an appointment, and is Monday a holiday? Like, why wouldn't they be open on Monday? Like, I can't figure that one out. That one's confusing me. But today was Friday. They don't do much on the weekends, and they're not open on Monday. It's like, when are you open? Like, you're a doctor's office. If I can only get access to you 3 days out of every week, then I don't know if I want to keep going to you guys. It's a 7-day week. If 4 of those days of the week you're not available, I can't plan for all the things that are unplanned in my life to happen on those 4 days. Okay, so what do we got? May 27th. So Memorial Day. Okay, so it is a holiday. I wouldn't know it. It's one of those things my brain doesn't help me. I've thought about actually seeing if I could build a program on my phone to help me keep track of a schedule of like events that happen in the real world, not just the world where I play. So I've thought about building a schedule or a planner that's a visual-based planner, sort of like a game almost, for helping you keep track of your to-do list and getting things done. But that's not what we're working on right now. This week is the games that we're working on right now are the Space Invaders, Vader style, the Whack an Asteroid, and the side scroller is the one I needed to really think about tonight. I think we figured out the edible ghost, as I call it. Edible ghost. We figured that one out pretty well last night. And then the side scroller is going to share some similarities with the second game that I want to dabble with a little bit, which is the People of the Clear Waters. So that's just pure, mostly side scroller puzzle, or platformer puzzle, I should say. And I feel like I kind of want to make that game one where you work your way through one level. Like in most games like that, you get to a level, you work through the level, you leave the level, and you move on to the next level or the next environment, the next world. And there's an aspect of story and world building I want to do that allows you to go through a world and know that there are things in that world you can't do right now. Finish what you can in that world, go to your cutscenes, go to another world, get a boon or a feature, come back to the center, and then go back through a world you've already been through backwards to get access to something. Like, I kind of want to do that in a platformer style game. Because I feel like I haven't seen that done, and I dislike the idea of building a whole world and then having the pieces that you walk through inaccessible for all time after. I don't feel like that's a realistic. Like, I know it's a game, and I know that what I'm building in that game is fantasy, but the sense that, like, as you uncover worlds and explore them and open them up to you, they don't close off. Like, they're still there. And I suppose, like, one of the things I can do in a setting like that is, if you visit one little cul-de-sac, essentially, a looping world that you track through to get things, we're going to have like power-ups that you grab as you go through there that you can sort of mine for their advantages for your character in other setting play. But I think that's going to take some figuring out to try to get a sense of whether or not objects are transferable between worlds. So if I get object B and I have it in my inventory, when I go to world B, do I have the object I got in the previous world? Like, I need to figure out how to do that. And we're getting very close to doing an RPG again. But the style I want for this is to be a platformer style game with sort of a Mortal Kombat arena fight. Not really Mortal Kombat. Like, I don't want to do the fatality, brutality stuff. I'm not really into that, but I like the player versus AI one-on-one fight. Sometimes maybe not one-on-one. That's the other thing, is they may be, it's the boss fight essentially, but they won't be set up as the boss fight. They'll be set up in certain locations throughout the worlds. Let's see. So the arena fight trick for that is harvesting. There's also the harvesting objects. What I'm thinking for this is the arena fights, I think that's what I'll call them. They'll take place at a point in any world. So, like, main character enters the greater world through a world. So they go through a world, like a cutscene to start you with, drops you off in a world. You go through the world. You get to the end of it. You get out of it, and you go to a cutscene that establishes you in one given location. And I feel like I'm trying to remember, like, the Super Mario Brothers 2. Or was it 2 or 3? When you play the Mario games, there's a Mario game, it was one of the first ones that introduces you to the overworld map, where you can see, like, you start here, you go to this world, you complete this world, and then you decide between the next 2 worlds which one you want to go to. And there are a couple things, like you can play some games, like you could go through world 4.3 or whatever. And when you've cleared that level, then you go down to like a slot machine where you can play it and see if you can get a bonus. Like that overworld, if I could potentially not do it quite that same way, but sort of do that, this is the new base of operations where you end up. And when you're at that location, you choose the other worlds that you go to from there. And you can go through those worlds for certain things that are important to you right now, and then come back to the center world, the base of operations, and go back to a world you maybe already went through, because now you have an added capability that lets you unlock certain things, and then come back to the center world again, and then maybe with what you figure out there, go back to the world where you got the resources that let you do things there, and it opens up an accessibility point there that you didn't previously have. And then like I need to figure out how to do cutscenes, but I think the other thing is like when you confront a boss, maybe in specific locations at specific times, there's a checkpoint or a portal that appears when you've met a specific set of requirements. And when you get there, you go through that portal and it's a combat of some kind. Like in Mario, they have like they have the Hammer Brothers, which are two villains that are launching hammers at you, and you have to defeat both of them. That's sort of an example of like you can do Bowser or the Hammer Brothers or one of those clouds that throws the shells at you. So you could do sort of like a shaman that has angry zombies or monsters that it releases towards you, and so you have more than one thing to fight and more than one enemy character. So it's not really a boss so much as a big event that you have to conquer. And so it's not a linear story necessarily. I think what I need to do is take a look at games like Mega Man. I believe some of those had things where like you had to go through multiple worlds, but you could do it in any order that you needed to. So something like that maybe. And have it so that you can go through a world, go and get a key to another aspect of another world, which can give you the key to an aspect of the world you already went through, and sort of make it like a grand, larger scale puzzle of things that you need to work out in a sequence to make things happen in the right way for this story. It makes it a very unusual game. It's not like many of the others that are out there. But I think it could, especially because I'm a story-based game designer. Like the game serves the story. The story isn't built to make the game. So especially for something like People of the Clear Waters, making the whole story work out in a certain way is the more valuable approach for what I want to do with the game. I don't want it to be a mindless, simple button pusher game. I mean, even with Captain Mr. Space Ninja, that game is built around a story. Character starts out in setting A, is attacked by villain character, and must rescue somebody from the villain character. So the first part of gameplay is pursuit. And then the second part of gameplay is get on board the ship while knocking out the attack from the enemy. Third part is working through the traps to get to the boss and the person you're rescuing. And then the third part is, the sort of superhero's dilemma, as suggested by some movies, is you can save the hostage or you can catch the villain. And having the game play out as that's actually not a bad idea. That's not a bad idea. See, I had always intended it for a little bit of fun to be just more of a linear story path where the thing you go in pursuit of is saving the hostage. But I wonder, would it be worth doing a hero's dilemma, pick which way you're going to go? And that's sort of the boss battle at the end of that platformer side-scroller version. Is the boss battle at the end is the decision of save the hostage or catch the villain. And the consequences of that choice are the last round are either trying to catch the hostage as the way we described the edible ghost story yesterday, where you're kind of using a grapple to hook onto things and pull yourself into an intercept vector to catch the thing that's drifting around. So the thing that's drifting around is either the villain or the hostage. So you have to rescue either of those things, or you have to catch either of those things. And so there are two paths you can choose at the end. It's the same game either way, but the choice of what you're rescuing is dependent on the choice you make in the last part of the side scroller. See, that's an interesting twist, because the side scroller platformer version in the middle of that game was pretty much the most straightforward and uninteresting part of the game in my mind. I mean, we can make it interesting. It's you trying to avoid traps. That's not a big deal. That's pretty straightforward. You can do that relatively easily. But unlike the other ones where they have a visual gimmick and a theme and sort of bending them so that they don't fit the uniform idea that the other game, like the game they're based on, usually follows. So it's like a little deviation from that model. But I kind of like the idea of you make your way through the traps and you get to the end and you're confronted by the villain. And it's like, here's your choice. Rescue this hostage or catch the villain. And then whichever choice you make, that's what you have to try to get in the last game. That's an interesting choice. I like that. I will have to keep that in mind. All right. Catch the villain or save the hostage. All right, so that makes sense for that. And then edible ghost is the methodology we do for that. So grapple. But even, as I was saying, before I got sidetracked by that idea, Even that game is based off of the story of mundane life, call to adventure, pursuit, confrontation, the battle, the setback, the work towards confrontation, and then the climax. And that's the archetypal story. It's the story of how the game is supposed to be built. I'm hanging the mechanics of the game, the artwork, and all those other aspects on those pegs. People of the Clear Waters is a character who moves into a position that they're not familiar with, and they're in a world they don't understand. But it is something that they have to come into and manage. They're now in charge of this. They have to do something very big. And they're going to have quasi allies and quasi enemies and actual enemies and true allies, and organizing a lot of that to make things fall through in the right way to get a desirable outcome in the end. And the losses that one experiences along the way, that's all what this game is. That is the story of this game. The mechanics and the world and the artwork, those are what I'm hanging on the pegs of the mechanics of this game. The story is the important part for me. Now, if I do something like what I was talking about, where I do a game a day, I don't know that I could do that, but if I did try to do something like that, a game a day game would be not particularly story driven. It would be a gimmick. It would be Flappy Birds, is what it would probably be. You have a setting, you have artwork, and you have actions you can perform, and you're trying to build a high score. That would be all that I would do for a game a day. But I bet I could do it. I'd have to think about that. It'd be a hard week. That would be a hard week. But it could be kind of fun to try to do that. All right, so what I'm looking at here is, I think for the arena, for what I call arena fights, and people, I know I'm all over the board today. I am all over the place. I feel like a scatterbrain right now, but so the platformer puzzle is the main methodology of traveling through. So puzzles, avoid the monster, watch out for traps or hazards in this case, because it's going to be a mythical landscape. They're going to be little monsters like kelpies or whatever, and then they're going to be booby traps or other things that you have to avoid or watch out for. And then there are going to be things that you can collect that are potentially useful for you, things that are locked that you can't get access to yet. And you get to a sort of overworld setting, and that world is the point from which you can access the other worlds. So I have to really take a look at something like a Mega Man game and get a sense for what that's like. Because I don't think I ever played the Mega Man games. I do know that supposedly, one of them at least, had gameplay that allowed you to go to World 1, beat the the traps or whatever you need to get through to the enemy, the boss at the end of the level. You defeat the boss at the end of the level, you acquire one of his devices that gives you an added power, and then you're basically collecting the powers from other bosses, and it doesn't really seem to matter in what sequence you do it. I think, if memory serves me, that's the way that game plays. And sort of doing that, but instead of it being like you have to beat the big boss to do this, sometimes it's going to be solve a big puzzle. Sometimes it's going to be perform a particular action. Sometimes it will be a fight. And the end result of those things will open up new story elements. And some of those, like I have to make it fit the story right. I feel like you have to kind of do some things in the right sequence. So you can't spend 3 weeks going back and forth and collecting herbs to make a recipe without the main story of the real bad guys in the background. They have to be working towards their goal. So if you're dilly-dallying, just playing around, doing minor things and not forwarding progress towards resolving the big story arc over everything, then that story arc is going to get past you, and then you're going to be in a place where you can't fix how far past you it is. So I got to figure out like a way to find the balance between that. I don't want it to be like a mystery, what you have to do to avoid the villains getting so far ahead that you can't win the game, but you're still in the middle of playing it. I don't want to do that. But I also don't want to do it in such a way that the overarching storyline can't progress until you do the thing that makes it progress to the next part. I think that's hazardous, but maybe not. Maybe it's not as hazardous as I think it is. Like, it's only really hazardous if I build it in such a way that the game is a sandbox game. Like, if you could spend the next 14 weeks, 3 hours a day, every day, for 14 weeks, playing this game and doing nothing but harvesting herbs to make medicine that you can sell to members of the community and make more money. Like, if that's the only thing you do for 14 weeks, like, if I make it possible to do that, then I've made something that sort of breaks the game. I need to continually prompt the player to keep on track with the main storyline. If I may set it up at a certain point where you finish the main storyline and then you can just go play in the other worlds again for a little while. I may do that. I think that makes sense. And I have very disorganizedly rambled for 35 minutes now. I think I'm going to call it here. I'm going to see if I can get... I'm debating whether or not tomorrow I'm going to show where I am in the game project on the screen, or if I'm going to take pictures with my camera of my screen as I play with it before tomorrow night's live video, put the pictures on my laptop, and keep this setup going the way it is, and then show what I've been working on through still pictures. I might just do that. I think that makes more sense. And what's tomorrow? Tomorrow's Saturday. So tomorrow's the last day for games this week. And then after video games is health and well-being. Yeah. It's just trying to juggle the programs that work and some that don't always work, and 2 different computers and 2 or 3 different programs for the video. I don't think any of this is up to it. These units are not gaming computers, so they're not really up to that workload. For opening BuildBox on this computer and live streaming on this computer, I don't think it has the ability to do it. I think that would stress it out too much. Having the live streaming on this computer while I BuildBox on this one was sort of what broke it on Monday, I think. This one, for some reason, sometimes doesn't like to do the live stream, though I've done it. The ones you've seen where I'm reclining in a room with the curtains behind, like the lace curtains behind me. That's this camera and this mic on this laptop, not this computer. So it works. I know it works. When I did the cooking show for, what was it, 5-6 nights, it was this laptop on a table over there with that camera and that mic set up on the counter there. And it worked. Like, admittedly, the first day or 2 gave me some trouble, but it still worked for the remainder of the week. So I got to figure out why it works sometimes and not others. But when I get that figured out, it offers me some possibilities of doing a little bit more with what I'm doing. Like, for all intents and purposes, I should have been able to do what I did for cooking, but instead of pointing the camera at the counter where I'm cooking, I should have been able to point it at the screen to show what I'm making for the game. That should work. But it didn't when I tried it. I don't know why. Pro level. Yeah, Audacity, like, it does most of what you need to do. LMMS has things you can't do in Audacity, but there is a video I saw a little while back on YouTube where a guy was like asking his fan base what he should do, and somebody said, "Can you make an entire piece of music using nothing but samples and Audacity?" And he did, and he did it. It wasn't like a high-end, amazing piece of music, but you could use it as background music for a project or something. And so, like, it's possible to compose music in Audacity. I don't know to what degree you could get used to doing it. If you could develop some simple templates or some tricks and hacks to make it work, could you just deliberately do stuff just that way and get so used to it that it meets all your needs? I don't know about that. For LMMS, it gives you more options, but I think if I remember correctly, you are mostly into Foley, the sound effects and samples. not so much into particularly writing music, right? So LMMS has some capabilities of tuning and tweaking and playing with the note that's produced or the tone. Yeah, so sound effects, I think Audacity's really got most of what you need. Although being able to warp and play with sounds like you can in LMMS, I think offers you a few extra features. Treat the sounds you have like an instrument and then control them in ways like you would with an instrument. So like using a drum set, you could make the sound of galloping or other things that you could use for movie sound effects. So you're really at that point just taking a piece of audio, turning it into an instrument, playing that instrument to produce a set of sounds that you can use to imply something else. It's sort of like in Monty Python, where they're clacking together coconuts to sound like horse trotting. Like you can take a clip from an environmental sound, warp it into an instrument, use that instrument to play a sequence that wasn't natural or you couldn't have found naturally. Play that sequence and pull it back over and use it in your sound effects environment. Ambiloop. I don't know enough about some of the sound editing software out there. I will potentially have to look into it if I ever get around to doing those reimagined movies. It's feeling further and further out because even though I want to do it as cheaply as possible and as low a budget as possible, like I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to afford everything I need to afford in June. June is a big month for costs for me. And I have a few debts that I need to keep paying off. And so it's just sort of like, I don't know what my opportunities are here. So, like, I don't have the money to sink into doing like a nice big full green screen that I can stand in front of with a green floor and maybe a few green screened objects that I can stand on or move or lean against or things like that, and then put sets and stuff behind me, and then to have the raw materials to build sets on the miniature that I can place myself inside of, and then do costuming and makeup. Those are all things that are way out of my range right now. Like, I'm already replanning my trip this summer. I don't know if I'm going to be able to go to Alaska this summer. And I don't know that I'll be able to do Canada this summer. I may just go out to the convention in California and come right back. I may hit the 3 southern states on the way to California, because I'm going to be passing relatively close. I think the issue for me on that is it costs me maybe another tank or 2 of gas to get there, and it costs me an additional 2 or 3 days where I got to figure out food and where I'm staying during that time. And I can sleep in my car. I'm okay with that. That's not a huge deal. But at the end of that, when you're talking about $35 a tank, and you're talking about, as you're traveling, no ability to refrigerate food means that you get a limited access to foods that I can digest. And that's going to cost me double or triple my usual daily food costs per day. And so, like, you're immediately starting to rack up costs. And I'll have, like, sort of enough to make that happen. But then I got to also consider, like, June is the month I have to register my car, inspect my car, pay the costs I need to get that any repairs done, like my windshield needs to be replaced, register my mailbox for receiving stuff, and I think they're like, I have to pay my storage fees, I have to pay car payment, I have to pay insurance payment, and the food budget for the month, and I need to pay the guy who I'm living on his property for short periods of time, and he wants rent for that. It is a thing. It's a whole conversation I don't want to get into right now, but that costs me money too. And so, like, if I'm here in June, most of June, that's easily, with the car registration and the car inspection and the repairs to the car and the mailbox, those are 4 or 5 things that are going to be about $100 each, in that range. And like $500 on top of what I pay per month for rent, and then to go spend like $300 in gas and tolls to get to California, and then finish up at the convention, like, getting back is going to cost me $300 again. I will get back in late July if I just go there and back. So that's going to be about $600 for the trip, plus $500 for the baseline costs. And we're already at my monthly income at that point. And to throw in the the extra 3 days to sidetrack to the 3 southern states. Right, well, the extra 6 days to sidetrack to the 3 southern states. The extra gas mileage, so 3 tanks of gas and 6 days of food. That racks up to another $200 almost, past what I'm going to have in my budget. And like, that budget will be what I can pull off in June. I get another paycheck in July, and so I'm going to be chewing up that one in July just to meet the overflow costs plus the standard monthly costs for July. And it doesn't do me any difference to whether or not I'm not back by August 1st, because like the next pay stub I'd get for August 1st, like I'm getting residual payments here for past time. What I get in August will be having to scramble to cover the overflow costs of July. And it'll be really tight to see if I can make it through August. So I have to really sit down and budget and plan. And once August is over and I get my first, like, back to work paycheck kind of thing, I think I'll probably get that going in September. And when I get that, it's going to be almost completely gone, trying to cover all the overflow costs again. There may be a couple of weeks somewhere in there where it's like it's the ramen noodle diet approach to handling a lot of that. But September, October, November, December, if things work out, I should be able to get a boost of income from bonus work that I can pick up that I should be able to pay off about 2/5 of the debt that I currently have to work through. And then theoretically, picking up a little extra work after New Year and seeing if I can earn enough to pay off the rest of the debt that I have. I'm already feeling like that's going to happen by January, February, March. It's going to be April before I'm free to adventure again. And by that point, I feel like it's possibly going to be like I'll have broken even and no longer have the debt that I need to pay off for most things other than the car payment, which I think I have 2 or 3 more years on. So I should be relatively free of all of that by April. But if I'm looking to pursue more projects and adventures like I've been doing, those are instantly going to put me back in the realm of debts to be able to make them happen. And I don't know that I'm ready to do that. And my plan was that by summer of next year, I might go to a few other countries. Right now, that's looking like that's not going to happen until the year after next year. Because next year I have the standard means of potentially earning the income to pay down my debts and being in one location. So I don't cut my income because I'm too busy traveling to pull off some of the things I need to do to earn money while traveling. That's hard to do, and you make less than a part-time minimum wage when you do that. That's really hard to make that work out. But the summer of 2020, there are going to be people who are hiring for political canvassers, and you can get $12 to $15 an hour doing that, and they'll let you work 6 to 7 days a week. You get about 5 to 6 hours a day. You can make enough doing that. If my health settles down, it's being a bit of a jerk lately. If my health settles down and I'm available to do that for 2020, summer of 2020, all the way into November of 2020, and then November of 2020, I could pick up work at the post office for the holiday season, and they pay you good money for that too. I should be able to get most of summer all the way through to New Year 2021. And at that point, I should be able to build my savings up enough again that I'm not constantly hitting the bottom of my barrel every month. And hopefully, I can have my merchandise, like my products, my games, my video games, my board games, my artwork, and a recipe book, and a couple books and some short stories published. Little pieces of income that are passive that make it possible for me to continue to make some money while I travel. I should have more of those in place by 2021. but it sucks having to adjust my entire plan a year out, because it's not what I wanted to be the case. But that's to talk about. Maybe that's what I'll do for what's we've done. Writing, video, board game, product and service. Well, I mean, I might set up like a Patreon account. The like download content, like audio files, potentially some music, prints of my artwork. So like part of the fun of doing each of these different things that I'm doing is like they each have a potential to be a passive income stream. But they're not like you don't have to pay to participate. You don't have to pay to, buy my cheap merch. Although I do think it would be fun to do a t-shirt line. I think that would be fun to do. I had a couple ideas for some stuff. I'll have to think about how I want to approach that. Because I know there are some things that would get a lot of attention and get a lot of purchases, but they are also touchy subjects. And they're the kind of thing that I don't want the channel to be known for. But they are things that I'm interested in and I support, and I know I could probably make sales in those areas. I may do that as a separate thing and do a separate set of t-shirts or something like that, mugs, hats, bags, or whatever, for this channel, and maybe even a separate one for Roving Jack. I don't know. But do ad revenue. If I can get to a point where I can get ad revenue from ads on YouTube, if I can get Patreon accounts, if I can get to a point where I can do affiliate marketing, and I can get to a point where I can actually get sponsorship deals, those 4 things alone could make it so that I'm breaking even every month rather than spending more than I have each month. And between that and the income I get from working the day jobs that I get and the seasonal work that I can find, I should get far enough into the positive that I can disappear for 4 months on a travel to get more video and content made, explore and meet interesting people worth making videos about and with, and fund it through that. To me, that would be far more worth my while. Ideally what I'd like to do at some point is potentially find a piece of cheap property somewhere in the US that I can go park a camper on in between traveling and not have to worry about like paying rent. Yeah, I could pay taxes on the property, but like I was talking with somebody, I couldn't believe it. I was talking with, I think it was Kentucky, talking with somebody in Kentucky when I was traveling last year. Was it just last year? Yeah, I think it was just last year. When I was traveling last year, talking with somebody in Kentucky about the property taxes, and he was just so aghast that the taxes in his town were $500 a year for a $62,000 piece of property. I'm like, first of all, where I'm from, we don't have any properties that are $62,000. If you had an outhouse on a 4-foot by 4-foot piece of land, you might be able to sell it for 62. But saying we had a $62,000 property in the 2 big towns of this state, the property taxes on a $62,000 property per year are $5,000 a year. And so, like, per year, if I budgeted, I could probably afford that if I had steady income from jobs and those passive income streams. So if I made about $500 to $1,000 per month, average that over a year, I'll have months where I'll make more and I'll have months where I make less. That's just the way that this type of work ends up being. But if I could get just with that $500 to $1,000 per month income from affiliate marketing, Patreon, and ad revenue, yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, like, New Hampshire, we don't have sales tax. We don't have income tax. We only have property tax. But the property tax we have is huge. Like, my mom had just a little under an acre, and it was a 3-bedroom house in a small rural town, and I believe she was paying $7,000 to $8,000 a year in property tax. And I was like, when I traveled across the country, looking at some of the other states, I looked at some of that, and I'm like, there are places out there that per year, it's like $500 in property tax. Like, the amount I could make from affiliate marketing and ad revenue from YouTube and Patreon and merch sales and sponsorship deals for one of my channels could probably pay the property tax on a quarter of an acre in Kentucky. Or I believe somebody was looking down at Savannah, Georgia. Somebody I knew looked into Savannah, Georgia, and found that property prices were really cheap down there too. And so I'm like, yeah, I as much as I like where I'm from, and this is the place I always think of as home, you can't rent an apartment for less than $800 here. Your apartment is going to cost you at least $1,100 per month. That's like a studio apartment. If you split a 3-bedroom apartment with 2 other people per month, you're likely to be paying about $400 a month each. And your utility costs are going to be about $300 a month each for electric, heat, because we have winter. We have a real winter here. And our summers are hot and humid. We get Florida summers and we get Minnesota winters. And so, like, your utilities, you're running electric for your air conditioner and you're running heat for your winters. You pay $500 sometimes in a month. You might have the, like, I remember the last place I lived before I went traveling. We set it up with our utilities company to split it up over a year, because we would have months in winter where just keeping the apartment, the 3-bedroom apartment we shared, heated, the bill for the heat was $700 that month. But you'd have a period between, I think it's probably early April to early June, where you didn't need heat and you didn't need air conditioning. So you could, like, your utility payments would go down to like $180 per month. And then Summer would kick in high heat period for about 2 or 3 months. And during that period of time, you're again paying probably about 200 to 300 for utilities here. And so like trying to do that was brutal because like right after New Year's, where if you worked seasonal jobs, a lot of places are cutting their seasonal workers because they don't want to do that anymore. Like it was in their budget when they were making a lot of money from the holiday season shopping, but now they don't want as many employees, so they cut people. So I usually find myself, switching from job to job at that point of year. I've worked for a few places where I worked about 5 to 10 years, but they're few and far between now. There aren't a lot of places that do that anymore. And so, like, it's usually you get a job for about a year. And I found a pretty sweet spot with the political canvassing and like, I could do winter, like snow removal for winter, and political canvassing is about every 2 years. From usually around November to December, or October to December, you can get work working for the post office sorting centers to sort packages for the holiday season. And that usually picks up right after canvassing runs out. So like I know that I have like 3 different jobs that cover fall, winter, and summer. So summer, fall, and winter. I can have some work that pays about $12 to $15 an hour, and I can usually find that work. But with things like the income one makes from a YouTube channel like this, you're going to have periods of the year where you get die off, and then it builds towards the hype seasons again. But if you average it out over the course of a year, $200 to $500 a month is not unreasonable to achieve through ad revenue and affiliate marketing. And so if I can pull that off, when we start talking about like a property in Kentucky having yearly property tax of $500, that's really doable. I can pay the entire year property taxes with a month of income from ad revenue. Like I don't get any ad revenue right now yet because I haven't built this channel out to do it. And I haven't signed up for Amazon affiliates yet because I'm sort of trying to really build towards doing what I need to do right. But knowing what my channels do and what those programs are like and seeing how they work, I'm reasonably certain that I could get $200 to $500. The thing is, you see a lot of YouTubers talk about like it's going to be a long while before you get to the point where you can make a living on YouTube. And the thing I'm always like, the first thing out of my mouth when I hear a YouTuber say something like that is, how are you defining a living? Because if I can get $500 a month and buy a quarter or a third of an acre for property taxes, then I can have a place that even if I can only pull up a camper and live on that property for 6 months out of the year. If I do one place in Kentucky and one place in Georgia, and I pay $600 a year in property tax on them, and I'm only allowed to have a camper there, I can turn them into campsites where I can, go in there and set up it as like a camper and camp there for spring and summer and fall and early winter at the other one. Like the cost of two $600 property taxes per year would be like, it's still a fifth of what we would pay here. And two $600 payments would be 3 to 5 months of ad revenue and affiliate marketing from a YouTube channel. Like if I can just do that, that would be amazing. It's totally doable, but I am so far at the bottom of the barrel right now. And like the place I return to, where my family is, where most of my friends are, and most of the jobs that I've ever worked that I know I can get, they're all here. And right here, right now, cost per month. Yeah, I won't be able to make the costs per month that I currently have here for years on YouTube. Like it's easily close to $1,500 a month here. And that's if you're living frugally. Most people here need at least $1,500 to $2,000 a month to survive. And nobody, unless you're like a degreed employee with a 5-year record at a company that worked their way up a ladder, you don't get offered that kind of living. $2,000 a month, it's not anywhere around here for entry-level workers. And most companies out there, that's all they're hiring. They're looking for a part-time entry-level employee. They don't hire full-time. Instead of doing a full-time employee, they would rather hire 3 part-timers. Because we have certain things that go on in our state where if you're a part-time employee, they can let you go when they want to. They don't have to give you any benefits. You don't get any vacation time. And it's just like you have no rights as an employee. And it's much cheaper for a business to hire people like that than have a full-time employee or a salary. So that's the nature of living in this area. But that being said, like all the people I know, the connections and the community I know in this area, I'd have to leave that behind if I want to go somewhere I could afford to be. Now, could I get things going with my writing, my artwork, music, video game production, products and service design, cookbooks, and ad revenue, and Amazon affiliates, and merchandise, and sponsorship deals? I could do all of that. And I imagine if I can get it all worked out in the next year and a half, I could make costs of living here. So those are sort of like the things I have to play with and figure out over the next few years. It's sort of like, I don't like having to do the business side of this because I really, really enjoy helping people figure out how to do creative things and doing creative projects. And I want to share what I create with other people. But I got to eat, I got to live. So sometimes it gets in the way. That sounds like a pretty sweet deal, honestly. Hire you for 11 months. Like if I could get a company that would hire anybody in this area for more than 4 months, that would be amazing. In this area, employment is very much like, I don't want to say it's like the the seasonal dip in YouTuber earnings. Because you hear a lot about like a YouTuber will say like, oh yeah, it's after the new year, so my ad revenue from YouTube is going to go down. It's sort of like that. In this area, like I could go get a job at a retail store and I could work the back room, the register, whatever. They'll hire me, they'll pay me per week, and they'll schedule me for 39.9 hours a week. Because they know the moment I cross that 0.1% more and cross into 40 hours a week, it's classed as being full-time. So they'll work me for 39.9 hours a week and expect me to show up. And sometimes they'll have me work till 11 p.m. one night and then get in there at 7 a.m. the next morning. And it's usually an hour commute. So it's sort of like 2 hours out of the middle of that, you get 5 hours of sleep that night. They'll work your full 8-hour shift, sometimes make you pull a double on one of those days. And then they'll have you 3 or 4 days in the middle of the week not work. And it's just sort of like, it makes it really hard if you're a student and you're going to school. You're not going to get the chance to do any classes. Not unless you're doing online classes that you can watch at your own time. Because no employer who employs somebody as a part-time is going to give you reasonable hours. And you're sure as hell not going to be able to get a second part-time job. Because your hours are erratic. They won't tell you what days you're working next week until the first day of the week. Oh, here's your schedule for the week. These are the days you're working. If you have 2 part-time jobs, if there's a conflict between one of those days, one of those companies is going to fire you. That's just the way it works around here. Yeah, it's just like, but I mean, I knew from an early age that this is the way that work was going. Because for a company, it makes perfect sense. Don't employ somebody long enough that you have to give them benefits or vacation time. You work them 39.9 hours a week, and you give them you don't have to insure them. You give them no holidays, and at the first chance, you get rid of them and hire a high schooler again. Like you fresh out of high school, grab another kid because he's looking for work and he's not qualified for anything yet. Grab one. And you do that over and over again. It gets you the employee and the work done without costing you what it would cost you if it was a full-time employee. You have 3 part-times, doesn't cost you a lick in insurance, doesn't cost you a lick in vacation time, paid vacation time, doesn't cost you a lick in anything. And you know full well you can get rid of that person by tomorrow. Like if you decide that this isn't the one we want right now, there's this desperate kid, we can actually get him to take fully minimum wage, which is $7.25 an hour right now, I think. We can get this guy to work for $7.25. This guy wants $8 an hour. We'll go for the $7.25. They know they can do that. And so they do that. And I knew that. I saw it every job I applied to after high school. I saw that during every job I worked in high school. I saw that was the way work was going. And it's part of the reason why I thought about doing my own creative stuff. Because here's the thing. You could be a locksmith. It was something I looked into. Or a clock repair shop. And you're going to get 5 jobs per month, possibly. If those 5 jobs earn enough for your costs of running business and your cost of living, then you are your own boss. That's the way to go. If you're an artist, you're going to have seasonal dips when people have money to invest in art or jewelry or craft objects for gifts for family. That's usually going to have a big spike in holiday seasons. So if you can make that money between November or the end of October and the end of December, if you can make $1,000 to $2,000 in those 3 months, it goes a long way to supplementing what you could do from part-time work or seasonal work like I do, where I find landscapers, snow removal, canvassing, or postal work. Like I can usually, if my health is up to it and I'm physically up to some of that stuff, like the canvassing, that's 6 miles of walking a day. Snow removal, that's probably 6 hours a night. Sometimes you do 10 hours a night because it's like when a snowstorm hits, that's when you work. Every other day, you don't work. So the big busy days are you may pull a 12 to 14 hour day shoveling and moving snow. But you'll make $20 an hour. So if you do 14 hours once every 2 weeks, you can make it pay. Landscaping, that's a little like summer and spring landscaping. That's a little more dependable. You can get you can even do it in fall where like people want help raking lawns. You can get paid $15 to $20 an hour to rake somebody's lawn. If you build a client list and say, I'll be back next week, you can make money that way. It's fairly decent. The hard part about doing that is making sure you either work for somebody who runs one of those companies or you have to work as a business owner to build a client base. And so that can be rather difficult. But between those seasonal jobs and being an artist and a locksmith, like those 3 things, like when you're not shoveling snow, you're a locksmith, and when you're not locksmithing or shoveling snow, you're doing artwork or video content, affiliate marketing through video. Like you can make $2,000 to $3,000 a month that way, and you could be in a good position. So I just like there are a lot of things to try to consider, and it's a lot of it feels like somebody's forcing your hand on a lot of it. Because I know I could probably live cheaply in Kentucky. I don't know what Kentucky's income tax situation is. So, like, I may only pay a certain amount in property taxes. But what other taxes do I have to pay attention to? But I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, the last time I ran the numbers on that is all taxes from Kentucky amount to about 1/3 of the property taxes in New Hampshire. I mean, it sounds to me like the universe is telling me that if I'm going to be poor in New Hampshire, I can be middle class in Kentucky. You should go to Kentucky. It sucks that it's making me make that choice. But that is for another time. I believe this coming week is a health and well-being discussion week. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do for that. First day is Sunday, so I got to figure that one out. Alrighty. Wow, we are almost at an hour and a half, so I will call it good for the night. All right. Take care. Have a good night, and I will see you tomorrow.